Welcome to the 52 Love Podcast, your show for 52 lessons in 52 weeks. Before we dive in, remember you can find the audio version of this episode, along with the rest of the series, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and Radio Public. And now, here's your host, Ms. Tonya Todd.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 52 Love Podcast. I'm your host, Tonya Todd. 52 Love began as a blog series last year, 52 Love Lessons in 52 Weeks. This year, we are exploring each of those tips with a new guest each week. And this week's tip is to cuddle naked. Here to talk about it is my guest, Ria Carrogan. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Hi, I'm Ria. Thank you for having me on. What do I do in general? I work in communications. I love writing. I love drawing. I love podcasting. I would say that's how I've distilled myself down. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that.
Well, you're also the host of a brand new podcast that is all yours.
Yes, of course. I should think about just plugging that more often, shouldn't I? I'm not very good at this. You can tell that I'm new. And I've had you on as well for the second ever episode, talking about Grease 2, which was a revelation. So much fun. So much fun. Also, the easiest editing I've ever done on a podcast. So that was fantastic. Thank you very much for being a good guest.
I don't know what I did, but I appreciate that it was not difficult for you. Tell us about your show.
Oh yes! Oh my God, I'm so useless. I'm like, right, let's start talking about your blog and your podcast, and to keep on forgetting myself. So it's called Femme on Film, and the premise is I want to reclaim, I guess, films that are by women, for women, star women, that basically society deems aren't good enough to be films, or women stop getting work because of it, or they receive abuse because of it, or they're just unfairly maligned, or they're much more ahead of their time than they're given credit for. So I've done Grease 2, Josie and the Pussycats. I've got so many other on the list that I want to do. Films like Practical Magic, First Wives Club. I've got like so many waiting to exhale, which I'm really looking forward to doing, because I used to watch that loads with my mum when I was a lot younger. So yeah, it's really good, and it's so much fun to talk to people about these films that are actually kind of special. I mean, It's not that they're good films. Not all of the films on the list that I want to talk about are going to particularly be the best films that have ever been made, but they're films that are influential for women, or have been overlooked and deserve to be revisited. So,
and also really unfairly maligned, because as you so eloquently said, how often do men make mediocre films and get to go on and make another mediocre film, and nobody does anything but shrug? But a woman does it one time, and then they don't get a chance to see. That's why women shouldn't make films.
Absolutely. And it drives me mad. And it's my thing that I say all the time, that men get to fail upwards, and women don't even have to fail, and they just don't go anywhere.
Right. It's not even failing sometimes. It's just average, and that. Well, it's not fantastic. It's not over the moon, and thus you are a failure. I think that's happening with Eternals right now. That people were looking to dislike it before it even came out.
And it's how can you combat that? You can't. And how can you live in a world like that? I mean, we see it every day in work. A woman goes for a job, she's more likely to be she's not going to be as paid as much as a man. We know that that's a fact. We know that women have to work harder in interviews. We know that women have to lie about their relationship status, about whether they have children, whether they want to have children. All of these things we have to
I'm
spend
an actor.
all of our time.
I know all about that.
I bet you do. We have to spend all of our time worrying about these things, and men don't get to. And I actually think this is probably a bit of a leap and reaching a bit, but I think the film industry is the perfect example of that, right? If an actress isn't the most perfect, exquisite woman in the world, who's forever youthful, she won't get jobs, or she'll be difficult, right? A woman stands up for herself. We've seen it with Katherine Heigl. We've seen it with Ruby Rose. We've seen all these women who stand up for themselves and the people around them, and they're difficult women. And apparently difficult women is a insult. I would be very happy to be labelled a difficult woman. Thank you very much. And then we see it like on a grander scale with female directors. We see that there are less female directors than men. We see that they only make films like every 5 years. And it's bullshit. It's just all bullshit. Fuck the patriarchy. Harry, it's taken me nearly 5 minutes
to get to that point.
Yeah.
But what you said about the film industry, I mean, a woman's marketability is based on how bangable she is. And that is completely unfair.
It's disgusting, isn't it? It's absolutely disgusting.
So let's talk about something that's not disgusting. Let's talk about cuddling naked. How did your assignment go?
Well, so I can't say that I fully did the assignment because I'm not very well. So I'm not feeling particularly attractive or really wanting to snuggle. But we did have a slight naked snuggle, which was lovely. But I think the best thing I love about this assignment is that I love being naked and I love cuddling. So way before I had a child who was 3, I would be naked all the time and we'd have lovely naked cuddles, always, because it's just nice. I used to sleep naked, so I'd have, lying in bed, my other half would just come and wrap his arms around me. And, sometimes it would lead to something, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes it's literally just a naked cuddle, that feeling secure, that skin-to-skin contact. I mean, obviously it happens less now that I have a toddler and we have no time and we're constantly tired. But it was really nice, actually.
But you don't have to be really awake to cuddle naked. You could fall asleep in each other's arms naked.
Well, I don't sleep naked anymore because I have a toddler who doesn't sleep through the night.
I see.
Yeah, and I am rather well endowed. So I don't really feel like I want to be running around our house, tits out. At
What a phrase.
So I'm
Tell us more.
Look, in my ideal world, it's nothing to do with shame. So I'm not slim. I would say I'm fat. I wouldn't say I'm overweight because I disagree with that term, because what weight are you supposed to be in, and when are you over? And that's a different conversation. But that's never stopped me, whether I've been slim or fat or bigger than I am now, when I was pregnant, not pregnant, nothing's ever stopped me being naked. I absolutely love being naked. I don't even find it freeing. It's just my favorite way to be. I'm not ashamed of my body in any way or anything like that. So and for me, just being naked it's just fine. Obviously, if you don't want to be naked, that's fine. I would never force anyone to be so. But but for me, it's just something I like doing. So I'd be happily walking around the house naked, although we have a window that doesn't have a blind or a curtain, so I have to do it less often now than I used to in the old flat. So definitely there is sort of like the sleepy cuddling up naked, which I'm totally for. But then there's also the lovely naked cuddles where you kind of know that it's going to lead somewhere. I like those ones. I like when, because like I said, I'm like very happy to be naked. I'm like, yeah, I think I could just have a little wander around naked after the shower.
Yeah.
And see where this goes. Like, force it to lead somewhere. I've forgotten what we were talking about because I'm just talking about being naked now.
Hey, being naked is part of the episode. In fact, why are we dressed now, right? We're going to go to audio only.
Oh dear. So I jumped on the chance of this, and we did it. My daughter's away. We were like, let's have a nice naked snuggle. I slept naked again. Like it's barely happening, and it's just really lovely. I think it's just, I know for some people it's their worst nightmare. My other half doesn't like being naked. So we're sort of opposites on that. He likes 2 layers most times. But it's just really lovely, and there's something so intimate about it, and there's something so nice, especially for us, because we don't get to do it that often. Just just enjoy each other's bodies, and not even in a sexual way. Just being able to be naked. I love his body. He is, I would say, pretty average sized. That sounds. In his
that's
body,
not what you meant.
Everybody. Naughty, dirty people. And I think that's sort of my preferred sort of body shape, body type as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, if Chris Evans came along with his Captain America six-pack, I will also take a look at that. Don't get me wrong. But in general,
no
I
problem
guess,
naked cuddling that, huh?
yeah. I guess it's called the dad bod these days, isn't it? I like that. I sort of like a bit of softness, and I like it. I like soft skin, all of those sort of things. It's just really lovely to experience.
I know this isn't really about couples, but because you do have a child, I'm wondering, did you do that skin on skin thing with your daughter?
Yes, and actually, it was really important to me. I didn't think it would be. So when I was pregnant, so I hated being pregnant. I think pregnancy's gross. And so when I was reading all the pregnancy books and the giving birth books, there wasn't anything really that sort of stuck out to me apart from skin on skin. It was something I really wanted to do. And it's wonderful here. I gave birth in a birthing centre, not by choice. If I'd been able to have the epidural, I would have done. I believe in science, and please give me the painkillers, because I gave birth without them and it was horrendous. But I also gave birth in water, so I was in a birthing tub, and that was a really lovely experience. I was the first one to touch her, to pick her up out of the water, and then immediately put her on my belly and just hold her and feel that nothing will ever, as hideous as birth is, and also having a newborn, pregnancy and birth and parenthood's wonderful. That feeling of this thing I'd given birth to, and being there on my skin and touching her was absolutely wonderful. And then
so it was good for both of you.
Yeah, and I totally, that's the one thing I buy in, and as you talk about in the blog post, that release of endorphins is insane. Like I did not enjoy giving birth, and then all of a sudden I've got her there and she's touching me and I'm touching her, and it's just, and then just this just absolute happiness. And
right, and it is the same thing with couples. Like you're just skin on skin. You're just that exchange. It's energy, and it's oxytocin and all of that.
Yeah, and you definitely see the benefits. When she was little, like really first born, we did a lot of skin on skin, and my other half, he would do it as well. So he would just like tuck her under his t-shirt so she wouldn't get cold, and then she would just lie there with her.
That's adorable.
It was so cute. And she'd have her little head poking out of his t-shirt or sleeping, and he'd just have her there, and it comforted her. Like it's, you get fed so much bullshit about babies, but that's like one of the true things for me. It just truly comforted her. We would put her on our skin. I tried to breastfeed and couldn't, had multiple problems with it, but just putting her on my chest without her worrying about feeding, she would just instantly calm. And I get it. I'm very tactile. I like that. I like being touched by anybody, really. Obviously in a consensual way.
Right.
I'd like it.
But physical touch is one of your love languages at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. When, if my other half, if he comes past me and just like brushes my shoulder or my arm, I get a small thrill from it. And I get the same from my friends. I love hugging. It's so funny because he doesn't, but I love hugging. If I see my friends, I'm like, I instantly want to hug, and I want a big bear hug. I want to be enveloped, and I want to feel that sort of love from somebody. So yes, it's a huge thing for me. And then obviously, clearly, adding nakedness, I'm all for it.
Bonus.
Yeah.
So we should mention that Mike Burton is responsible for bringing us together, and in a sense, Tony too. Tony Farina. It's the whole comics in motion thing. We're having I was saying in a previous podcast that I feel like a distant step cousin, or I'm just like a part of the family, but not quite really part of the family. I'm not in the comics, but I'm in everybody's show almost,
Come join us.
Right. One of us.
Forever.
Right. Oh, you don't even know. But I love the community of Comics in Motion, and now you have your own show. How did it come to be that you were going to start your own podcast? Because I know that your brother has one, and you were kind of always popping in here or there. How did you decide, and how did they say, hey, we'll help you out with this, you can use our platform? How did that happen?
Well, I'm very lucky. So my brother Jack, who works with Tony on, they did Binging Buffy together. Now they're doing Investigating Angel. I've probably got the names wrong, which is terrible, isn't it? He wanted to carry on the Whedon.
I think that's right.
To say his name. Yeah, is it good? The Joss Whedon oeuvre, as problematic as that is, and do the Nevers. So he started doing a show on the Nevers and asked if I wanted to come on that, and of course jumped at the chance. TV show about women with special powers. Yes,
right.
He knows my brand. So I went on that and just really enjoyed it. I mean, it's all down to him, really. And then from that, I got invited on a couple of other stuff, other podcasts in Comics in Motion. And then I did some of the Buffy stuff with them as well, as you did. And then just to chatting about things. So I love Comics in Motion, but it is all men. Obviously Megan pops up and you
yes.
come in as well. But it is all men. And as much as I love the community, I was, we were there in our chats and I was saying, well, I think about it from this perspective and like this and like that. And of course, because they're all lovely, they were like, yeah, you're right. Oh yeah.
Right.
That's just, they are just literally the most accepting.
They're an amazing group of men.
It's honestly unheard of. And I'm a feminist and I believe in equality.
Yeah, but they are too.
Exactly. And that's the thing, I'm not here to say that all men are terrible, but in my experience, a lot of men are as damaged by the patriarchy as everybody else. They buy into patriarchal ideas. Not the Comics in Motion fellas. Yeah, I mean, a little thing will creep in, as it will with me, because we live in a patriarchal society. But if you bring them up on it, they're like totally cool about it. I mean, and they can bring me up on stuff as well. I'm totally cool with it. So it's just
right, we're
really
all
lovely.
guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly. So lovely and accepting and welcoming. And so then I was actually chatting with Spider Dan about his podcast, and we were talking about going on and doing a film. And I said, Josie and the Pussycats is massively unfairly maligned. I want to talk about Josie and the Pussycats. And then we were having this conversation. I was like, no, I want to do this myself. I don't want to go on somebody else's and talk about it. This is mine. Like,
I'm taking ownership of this.
Yeah, I'm taking it back. So like conversations with him were the seeds of the idea. And then I chatted to Tony and Jack about it because we've got a little WhatsApp group. And they were like, just pitch it to Dave. Dave's going to love it. And I did, and here we are. And then Dave was like, off you go and do it, which felt like a lot of responsibility. Like, I imagine Dave's an incredible manager. I think if he's in charge of you at work, I imagine he gives you a lot of autonomy and sort of like lets you go off and try things. Because I was like,
it's better than micromanaging, though.
Exactly. But at the same time, like a lot of faith. And that was wonderful. And now I love it. I love chatting to people. I don't.
Your theme song is great. Like, who did your song?
You. I just found it off. It's called just Silverman Music, and it's just this amazing guy who just does lots of different tunes and songs.
Great choice. It was good.
And I just spent
like you just find yourself just kind of,
yeah. And it's something a bit rocky, a bit,
right. Like, oh, this is an edgy show. Yeah, I'm with it.
I don't think I've ever been described as edgy. Oh dear. So it just came from that, and I love having the space to talk about it, and I'm starting to meet some amazing people. Like, I feel very lucky that I've met you, and I'm starting to like pilfer guests from other people, which is really amazing.
Right. I can't tell you how many times Mike Burton has been responsible for one of my guests or one of the things that I do. Like, he's done my logo, he's just been so wonderful with everything. And I want to say that I listened to you on his show and I learned something that I would like you to discuss here. I want to hear about your love affair with podcasts, because before, you are now only recently a podcast host, but you have loved them for years.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I love podcasts so much. So I can't really. I think Serial, and I'm sure I talked about this in Mike. I think Serial's the first podcast that really got me hooked. I had listened to podcasts beforehand, so one's mostly from sort of like radio from over here shows, and they would break them down into podcasts and publish them, or sort of long form storytelling on podcasts. And I listened to Serial as everybody did, and that was just it. And then I started walking to and from work. Actually, it goes back much further than that. I didn't any opportunity, I would just listen to them. And I did the classic. I started off with true crime podcasts and just devoured all of them, and then went on to the classic comedy podcasts, and then sort of anything that skewed towards women and feminism. And now I have so many podcasts that I listen to. It's ridiculous. And I love discovering a new podcast, and I love discovering podcast communities. I just think it's such an interesting medium, and I think there's so much that can be done with it. And I just find them really special. And I find even a mediocre podcast has something to get you hooked. And also, I'd say that my podcast journey, I've found really interesting. I've definitely moved from the sort of mainstream podcast that everybody listens to more indie podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I don't like mainstream podcasts. I will continue to listen to them. But, is comedians interviewing comedians? Yeah, Off Menu. So Off Menu with Ed Gamble and James Acaster is an absolutely fantastic podcast. I don't think you can ever say that it isn't. But once you listen to all of Off Menu, you can't listen to any other comedians' podcasts because they all have the same guests on. And so you're just done. And then you get something like, yeah, exactly. And then you get something like The Cinemile, which is an amazing podcast that started to get, I think it's not started, it's had quite a big following for a while, which was just a couple over here. They lived in London, don't anymore. And they would go to the cinema and then they'd walk home and record their thoughts on the film that they just talked about. That was lightning in a bottle that I don't think they even knew that they had. And then they were just publishing it and people were listening. And I love film.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to a lot of film podcasts, but all from critics or reviewers or people within the industry, or you'd speak, they'd talk to like a sound person about a film, whatever. And cinema isn't that. It's just two people who love film talking about it. Just two normal people,
right?
And
just enjoying, enjoying the experience as spectators, right?
Yeah, and like when do we get to enjoy that? And then I just think podcasts are so special. And I love that you can get ones that are really produced. There's a one called Noble Blood by Dana Schwartz, and she talks about historical figures, but she leans into it a bit more. So she will sort of bust myths about them, I guess, but through storytelling about them. And it's got all this background music. So I think lots of people would say it's overproduced, but I love it. I'm like, it's so dramatic. I love it. And then you get something like You're Wrong About, which is possibly one of my all-time favorite podcasts. And they talk about, so they'll take things that have happened, so like the McDonald's hot coffee incident, and break it down and sort of tell the truth about it. And it, especially when it first came out, it felt quite rough and ready, but it's two journalists, so they could tell the content well, and you trusted the content. And again, that's something that's grown and is also that lightning in a bottle. And I think that's what's so special about podcasts, that it can start off as something small of just two people talking, or just wanting to talk about historical figures, or talk about films, or talk about plants, talk about birds. Mike, he talks about Star Wars comics,
right?
And you can just talk about it, and you can find like
he has two shows, one that is just dedicated to Star Wars, and the other is just interesting conversations with interesting people,
right? And I think that, and I just think it's so special, and I think podcasting's accessible to people. It's accessible to nearly everyone, and there is, the barrier to entry is whether you can set up Zoom, right? And then you can sign up.
At a certain level, you're right.
And isn't that wonderful? And it gives an opportunity to other voices. Sure, like I talked about, so many podcasts are unfortunately, cis white men or white women and things like that. But it can provide a platform and it can open doors. The Buffering Vampire Slayer podcast, for example, started off as they were a couple at the time. They're not anymore. As them talking about Buffy, and then they moved to talking to Angel, and they provided a platform for voices of women of color. Their whole community is about educating and learning and improving yourself, and they do the same. They do the work along with their audience. And when do you experience that? You don't experience that, in a TV show or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. I really like podcasting, if you can't tell. Am I here to talk about podcasting or being
Yes. It's a wonder it took you so long to host your own podcast, because you do. But this is a part of you that I love, like that you're so passionate about it, and I'm here for it.
Also, I didn't realize until I started doing this, it's like I mean, I've always known that I talk a lot, but I've always liked talking to other people and hearing from other people. As I talked about in my guide, I if somebody's got something to talk about, I will listen. I find it endlessly fascinating. Like, I sit for hours and listen to my other half talking about music theory, because he's doing it for his ukulele and guitar. And I'm sure most other people would switch off, but because he cares and he's passionate about it,
right,
I just want to sit and listen. But yeah, it comes to podcasts, I can't bloody stop talking.
Which is why I wanted to give you an opportunity to share your love.
I just can't stop it. And then afterwards I'll be like, just pause, Ria. Just pause. Come on.
There is one more thing I learned about you on my show that I would like you to share, and that is the questions that you have on that website, because they are funny, and it's just, wow. And sometimes it's an easy answer, and sometimes you're like, wow, what is my answer? So please tell how that came about. And, for those who have absolutely no idea what we're referencing, would you please enlighten them?
So apparently I ask a lot of questions. Often my question is, what was your favorite about X, Y, and Z? Which is weird, because I don't necessarily believe in favorites, because I think you can have multiple favorites. So we'll go and see a film and I'll be like, oh, what was your favorite scene? Or who was your favorite character? What was your favorite line? But I clearly just use the word favorite far too much. But I love that. I will start.
It's one of your favorite words.
Yeah. I say definitely too much. That is one of my favorite words, clearly. But I don't know, a question will just pop into my head. And I guess maybe I don't have much of a filter, and I will just ask that question. So my other half found this hilarious, and he decided to just write them down without me knowing. And then one night he was just tippy-tapping away, because he's a developer, he's a programmer, on his laptop, and then just sent me a link to a website he created called Ria's Questions. And it's just questions that apparently I've asked. I can't remember half of them. The one people seem to like the most is my question about ice. What's your favourite type of ice? Which I think is a valid question.
It is.
Thank you very much.
You're not giving your answer.
Well, okay. So what is my favourite type of ice? I would suggest crushed ice, because I think it's lovely and it's refreshing. Refreshing.
Well, if you're refreshed, then you can just throw off those G's, right?
Yeah.
I'm refreshed.
You can have it in a cocktail, lovely. You could have it in a nice soft drink. You can have it in water, crushed ice in water. Delicious. And then after that, I would say like those probably big square ice cubes.
So there's an ice hierarchy for you.
I think so. I do think so.
Let's see. I prefer my beverages to just be cold without the need for ice. But if you have to have ice, it has to be crushed ice, because then you get the fun of the slushy Slurpee. Have you ever had a Slurpee?
Yes, I love a Slurpee.
They are delicious.
Yeah, so good. I love a Slurpee. Anything like that, I think I would just drink straight. I can't make it last. People can have stuff like that and they'll make it last.
Use a straw, that helps it to last.
No, I don't think. I think it just goes down faster.
Well, we are about out of time. Please
Oh,
let
sorry.
the audience know. It's okay. That's how it goes. Let the audience know where they can find you, where they can find your podcast, and how they can support you.
Yes, so you can support me just by listening, please. That would be really lovely. And I guess leaving reviews, get in contact with me. Well, let me tell you how to do that first. So you can find me personally on Twitter at Ria Carrogan, RiaCarrogan. And then I've got Femme on Film, which is Femme, FEMMEONFILM pod at the end. So Femme on Film pod. So come there, talk about the films, talk about, like, I'd love it if people just came and started recommending films or talking to me about films, even pushing back on ideas that I've had about films. That'd be fantastic. And also with the pop gorillas, not the giant ape, but the sort of
Guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare. Thank you. I never know how to say it without maybe offending somebody. With Tony and Jack. So we're just at the pop gorillas, spelled like guerrilla warfare. And then I also do Indie Comic Spotlight with Tony on Comics in Motion. So I am literally everywhere. You can't get rid of me. If you want to come and talk to me in a non-offensive way about naked hugging, come and do that. That'd be fantastic. There's got to be more than just me out there. So I think they're all the places that you can find me.
And then one more time, you asked for recommendations, but tell people the theme of your show so they know what types of movies to recommend for you.
Yes, absolutely. See, this is why you're an excellent host.
Thank you.
So, so it's films for women, made by women, often being unfairly maligned, that are often feminist in nature. We live in a world of male critics who will often avoid or purposely maybe misunderstand films for women. Like I said, they don't necessarily have to be good, but there's something special or important about them, or important for you. So Tonya, for example, reintroduced me to Grease 2, which I never would have revisited, and I think has some incredible things for women to take away in not putting up with poopy heads.
I ain't no one's trophy goose.
Exactly. It's I think it's, and I love that. I love that it's got some surprising feminist themes in it. So anything like that perfectly fits into Femme on Film.
And I don't know if you've seen the response, but there's quite a following for Grease 2 out there. There's a community out there that just doing the episode opened the world even bigger to me.
I know, isn't it crazy? I'm so pleased I included the hashtag, because I'm hoping to have some conversations when I'm feeling a bit more spry. So
yes,
yeah, have some chats.
Well, thank you everyone for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you give Ria some non-naked hugs in the comments. And until next time, remember to treat love like a verb.